Hello lovely 5th graders, welcome back to our class. In today's class for week 7, we are going to make a revision for the present passive and the difference between with and by. So let's start together. First of all, do you remember the difference between active and passive sentences? Excellent, you were right. In active sentences, we have a subject. We know who did the action. Take this example. They are making a film. This is an active sentence where we know the doer of the action, the subject. We have a subject, which is they. Whereas in passive sentences, I have this example. Lots of films are made in London. This is a passive sentence where we don't have a subject. Maybe because we don't know the subject, or it is not important to mention the doer of the action or the subject. We are concentrating on the action. We are concentrating on the verb rather than concentrating on the subject. So this is the difference between active and passive sentences. In active sentences, we have a subject. In passive sentences, there is no subject in the sentence. Another question, why do we use the passive voice? We use the passive if we don't know who or what is doing an action, or if it isn't important who or what is doing the action. So we use the passive form whenever I don't know the doer of the action, I don't know the subject, or it is not important who or what is doing the action. It is not important to mention the subject. This is why do we use the passive voice. Let's start with the passive simple present. Let's revise together the steps of making a simple present passive. The first step is to delete the subject. Step number 2, put the object at the beginning of the sentence. Step number 3, add am, is, or are according to the object. If the object is I, you are going to add am. If it is singular, add is. If it is plural, add are, followed by the past participle verb 3 with the complement. The last step, you can add by plus the subject at the end of the passive sentence. So this is how to make the present simple passive. Follow these steps to form a correct present simple passive. Some examples for active sentences that are changed into passive sentences. The secretary answers phone calls. When I want to change it into the passive, phone calls, which is the object, are answered by the secretary. The second example, Thomas feeds the hens. To change it into the passive, the hens are fed by Thomas. The students write the letters. The letters are written by the students. The mechanic repairs her car. Her car is repaired by the mechanic. So as you can see, all the passive sentences started with the object followed by are or is, with the past participle of the verb or verb 3 followed with by plus the subject. To the other idea that we are going to revise today is the difference between with and by. When do I use by with passive sentences and when do I use with? We use with to talk about what is used to do the action. What did we use to do this action? So for example, the streets are decorated with bright lights. So I have used with because I am talking about the things that I used to do the action, which means that I decorated the streets were decorated with bright lights. Moving to by, we can use by to say who or what does the action when we are talking about the subject. So for example, the car was repaired by the mechanic. So who repaired the car? The mechanic. So this is the difference between with and by. I use with to talk about what is used to do the action, and I use by to say who or what does the action. This is the difference between by and with. Moving to revision for week 8, we are going to start with the passive simple past and passive questions. Now, how to make the past simple passive? We are going to follow the same steps but with a slight difference because we are talking about the past where I use verb to in the sentences. I am talking about an action that happened and finished and I used verb to in the sentences. So the first step is to delete the subject. Then, to put the object at the beginning of the sentence. Step 3, add was or were. Was for singular, were for plural, followed with verb 3, the past participle plus the complement. The last step, you can add by or with plus the subject at the end of the passive sentence. Are some examples of simple past sentences that were changed into the passive. Sally took a lot of photos. A lot of photos were taken by Sally. Were plus verb 3 of take, which is taken. The detective solved the case. The case was solved by the detective. They bought the tickets yesterday. The tickets were bought yesterday. So I deleted the subject, bring the object at the beginning of the sentence, add was or were plus verb 3. Then you can add by plus the subject. These are few examples of changing some past sentences into the passive. Now let's move to the passive questions. I have 2 points here. We are going to talk about present simple passive and the past simple passive. We are going to discuss how to change a passive sentence into a passive question. And also we are going to talk about 2 types of questions, the yes or no questions or WH question. Take a look at these examples on the table here. First, we are going to start with the present simple. The passive sentence that I have, football is played at the stadium. So if I want to change this passive sentence into a passive question, I am going to switch between the object and the verb to be. So football is played at the stadium is going to change to is football played at the stadium? Another example, lots of cars are made in Germany. Let's change this passive sentence into passive question, but this time we are going to use a WH word. So I am going to add the WH word, which is where, and to make the same change, which is to switch between verb to be and the object. So it's going to be, where are lots of cars made? This is on how to change a passive sentence in the present simple to a passive question. Let's move to the past. How to change a simple past sentence in the passive to a passive question. We are going to use the same ideas. The first question, an email was sent yesterday. If I want to change this passive sentence into a question, switch between the object and verb to be. So the question is going to be, was an email sent yesterday? Another example for the WH questions. Books are written by William Shakespeare. If I want to change this passive sentence into passive questions using WH words, I'm going to use who. So, who were books written by? Pay attention that in the present simple and the past simple, I am talking about the same idea on changing the passive sentence into passive question. If I am forming yes or no question, we are going to switch between verb to be and the object. If I am forming WH question, add the WH word at the beginning, then verb to be, are, am, is, are, were or was for the past, followed by the object, verb 3, and the complement of the sentence. This is the idea on how to change the passive sentences into passive questions. Here is the structure of yes or no questions, WH questions, the passive questions, of course. So, if we are talking or forming yes or no question, we are going to start with verb to be in the present is or are, for the past was or were, followed by the subject and the past participle of the verb plus the complement, and at the end add a question mark because we are forming a question. For the WH question, add WH word followed by verb to be. It is or are in the present, was or were for the past, followed by the subject past participle of the verb plus the complement. So this is the structure of the passive questions for yes or no questions or WH question. Now, to remember the WH words, 1, who, we use it to ask about a person. 2, where, we use it to ask about place. 3, when, to ask about time. 4, which, to ask about things. Now here is 2 examples for a sentence in the simple present and a sentence in the simple past. These 2 sentences were changed into passive sentences and passive questions. Let's start with the present. Musicians all over the world play the guitar. To change it into passive sentence, follow the same steps. Delete the subject, bring the object to the beginning of the sentence, add is, am, or are plus verb 3, then you can add by with the subject. So the sentence becomes: the guitar is played by musicians all over the world. The guitar is the object, it is at the beginning of the sentence. We added is because the guitar is singular. Played is verb 3 of play. By musicians as the subject. To change this passive sentence into passive question, I am going to switch between the object and verb to be. The sentence is going to start with is. So, is the guitar played by musicians all over the world? This is a passive question. Let's move to the past part. Captain James drew the first map of Australia. This is a passive sentence because we have used verb to, which is draw. To change it into the passive sentence, follow the same steps. First of all, delete the subject, add the object to the beginning of the sentence, add was or were, because we are talking about past sentences. After adding was or were, add verb 3 of the verb or the past participle, followed by and the subject. So the sentence is going to be, the first map of Australia was drawn by Captain James. This is the passive sentence for the sentence Captain James drew the first map of Australia. To change this passive sentence into passive question, I am going to form a WH question this time. So I'm going to use who to ask about person. So who was the first map of Australia drawn by? I am using verb 3, was or were, followed by the subject and the complement of the sentence. So this is how to change a present sentence into passive sentence, a present active sentence into passive sentence and passive question, and how to change a past active sentence into passive sentence and passive question. Here are some exercises for you to practice the passive. You can do these exercises on your English notebook. In this exercise, rewrite the following sentences so that the new sentence has the same meaning, which means that you have to change these active sentences into passive sentences. Pay attention if the sentence in the present simple or in the simple past so you can change them correctly. Another group of sentences to change into the passive. End of this video. May Allah forgive our sins and help us use this blessed month to become better Muslims. Ramadan Mubarak. By the end of the semester, I want to thank all my dear students for everything they do today and every day and for making me so proud of them. Keep it up.